Welcome to the Serve Safe Food Handler Guide for food shelves and food distributions. Second Harvest recently has sent out a new partner agreement requiring all agencies to have one person receive food safety training and then train the rest of the staff and volunteers of the program. So, welcome to the training. First of all, I want to talk about the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act. The Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act ensures that agency partners and Second Harvest are protected from potential liability if someone becomes ill from eating food we provided, if we're acting in good faith. That means we're being proactive in managing recalls, meeting standard food safety practices, and ensuring that volunteers and staff are trained in food safety as relevant to the type of the food program we offer. To protect the donors of the food, agency partners, our food, and most importantly our clients, Second Harvest Heartland requires that at least one person must be trained in a food safety course and train the food preparation workers in safe food handling practices. Agencies then will show proof of the required certification to their account specialist at the site visits, which are completed every 2 years. We will be going through 5 sections. The first section is the importance of food safety. The second session is about personal hygiene. The third section is receiving and storing food safely. The fourth section is evaluating, repacking, and transporting food safely. And the final section is cleaning and sanitizing. We'll begin the first section, food safety is important. The concepts that you'll learn in this section is how food becomes unsafe, your role in keeping food safe. We'll talk about food allergies and how to prevent food allergen contamination. How food becomes unsafe. There are 3 types of hazards that can make food unsafe, and foodborne illness is almost always preventable. The first is biological hazards. These are tiny forms of life that you can't see, taste, or smell. This includes bacteria, viruses, parasites, and fungi. Some of these cause illness. These are called pathogens. Physical hazards include jewelry, glass, brittle plastics, ceramics, and bandages. Chemicals in your operation can contaminate food. These include cleaners, sanitizers, and pesticides. How food becomes unsafe. People can make food unsafe by having poor personal hygiene. Pathogens in the food handler's nose in this picture or mouth could end up in the food. Poor personal hygiene is the #1 cause of foodborne illness outbreaks. People can also make food unsafe by cross-contamination, which would be transferring pathogens from one surface or food to another. In the picture, the meat stored above the lettuce has been allowed to drip into it. Pathogens in the meat juices may have been transferred to the lettuce. People also make food unsafe by time temperature abuse, letting food stay too long at temperatures that are good for pathogen growth. The photo on the slide is an example of time temperature abuse. The meat is being held at room temperature. This could allow pathogens on the meat to grow and cause a foodborne illness. Food becomes unsafe also when people have poor cleaning and sanitizing practices, which means the pathogens are transferred from one surface, unclean surface, to food. The photo on the slide is an example of poor cleaning and sanitizing. The scale has not been cleaned and sanitized correctly and could transfer pathogens to food. Let's take a look at some of the problems. Leaving raw chicken breasts on a pallet in a loading area that is not refrigerated would be time temperature abuse. Another problem, sneezing on the food. Sneezing on food is poor personal hygiene. This can transfer pathogens from the body to the food. Another problem, keeping produce that raw meat juices have leaked on. That would be cross-contamination. Allowing raw meat to drip juices onto produce is called cross-contamination. It allows the transfer of pathogens on the meat to the produce. And the last one, what is the problem here? Scraping off food from an otherwise clean food storage container. This would be poor cleaning and sanitizing. The container was not cleaned and sanitized correctly, so the pathogens could be transferred to food stored in the container. Your role in keeping food safe. Practice good personal hygiene. Don't transfer pathogens from your body to the food. Control time and temperature of food. Don't let food stay too long at temperatures that are good for pathogen growth. How is the temperature being controlled in the photo? The temperature is being checked, and this ensures that food is held at the correct temperature. This prevents pathogen growth. Prevent cross-contamination. Don't transfer pathogens from one surface to another. How is the cross-contamination being prevented in the photo? You can see that the ready-to-eat food is stored above the raw hamburger. Clean and sanitize surfaces correctly. Keep everything clean. Clean and sanitize anything that touches food. Now we'll move into food allergens. What are the most common food allergens? For food distribution programs, the most important concept for dealing with food allergens is to have all products clearly labeled and never repack items. Do not split up packages that do not have clear labeling on all of the individual food items. Some people are allergic to certain types of food. The tiniest speck of that food can make them sick. The most common food allergens, commonly called the Big 8, are milk, eggs, soy, fish, nuts, and wheat. An important aspect of preventing food allergen contamination is to clean and sanitize surfaces that have come in contact with an allergen. Make sure that you inspect the food packaging for leaks or spills that can cause cross-contact. Store food with allergens separately from allergen-free products. Do not store food containing allergens above allergen-free food, and use dedicated pallets and bins for allergen products. Now we'll talk about which foods is a common food allergen. In this slide, you can see that cod would be the common food allergen. Fish such as bass, flounder, and cod is a common food allergen, whereas tea is not. In this picture, wheat flour is the common food allergen. Melons are not. Which food item is a common food allergen in this picture? Both of these items, peanut butter and crab legs, are food allergens. Which food items is a common food allergen in this picture? Neither potatoes nor mushrooms are food allergens. Which food in this slide is a common food allergen? Because the pie contains pecans, it is a common food allergen. Tomatoes are not. Which food on these slides is a common food allergen? Neither lemons nor bell peppers are common food allergens. Which of these foods is a common food allergen? Neither squash nor eggplant is a common food allergen. And on this slide, which is the common food allergen? Products containing soy, such as soybeans, are common food allergens. Rice and rice products are not. Which are the food allergens in this slide? If you answered both, you were correct. Eggs are a common food allergen, and milk products such as ice cream are also common food allergens. Try to prevent cross-contact from spilled food. If you have a spill of food allergens, immediately isolate it and inspect the surrounding products for contact with the spilled food. Dispose of any products that have been contaminated. The food may not have to be discarded if the packaging can be safely cleaned and sanitized, and then clean and sanitize the entire area. The second section that we will cover is good personal hygiene. Concepts you'll learn here is how and when to wash your hands, where to wash your hands, some other hand care guidelines, what to wear, and other important practices. How and when to wash your hands. Hands can transfer pathogens to food. Hand washing is a critical step for avoiding food contamination. How to wash your hands. Hand washing should take about 20 seconds. It takes about 20 seconds to sing happy birthday twice. This can serve as a useful reference when washing hands. Step number 1, wet hands and arms. Use running water as hot as you can comfortably stand. Step 2, apply the soap. Apply enough soap to build up a good lather. Step 3, scrub hands and arms vigorously for 10 to 15 seconds, cleaning under the fingernails and between fingers. Step 4, Rinse hands and arms thoroughly in running warm water. Step 5 is to dry your hands and arms. Do not use your apron or any part of your clothing. Use a single-use paper towel or a hand dryer. After you wash your hands, you can use the paper towel to turn off the faucet and open the restroom door. Now let's look at some situations where hand washing might or might not be required. Here we see a man leaving the restroom. Would hand washing be required? Yes. You should wash your hands after leaving the restroom. Here we see a woman who has been touching her forehead with her hand. Is hand washing required? Yes. Wash your hands after touching any part of your hair, face, or body. Here we see some raw meat products. Is hand washing required after handling them? Yes. Wash your hands after handling raw meat, poultry, or seafood, and you should wash them before you handle the product and after. Is hand washing required in this situation? Yes. You should wash your hands after taking out the garbage. Would hand washing be required in this situation? Yes. Wash your hands after you sneeze, cough, or use a tissue. Would hand washing be required in this slide? Yes. Wash your hands after handling chemicals that can make food unsafe. Would hand washing be required in this slide? Yes. Wash your hands after smoking. Would hand washing be required in this slide? The answer is yes. Wash your hands after chewing gum or tobacco. And would hand washing be required in this slide? The answer is yes. After eating and drinking, you should wash your hands. Is hand washing required in this slide? Yes. You should wash your hands before putting on gloves at the start of a new task. Would hand washing be required here? Yes. Wash your hands after touching anything that may contaminate your hands. A note on using hand antiseptics. Never use them instead of hand washing. You can use an antiseptic after washing your hands, wait for it to dry before touching food or equipment, or putting on gloves. Does this look like a safe place to wash hands? Why or why not? The answer is no, because this sink is a 3-compartment sink and not a hand-washing sink. Wash your hands only in a designated hand-washing sink. Is this a safe practice? Why or why not? No, this is not a safe practice. Dirty water is being dumped in a hand-washing sink. Use a hand-washing sink to wash your hands. Never dump dirty water in them. Never prep food in them. Never wash tools or equipment in them. A hand-washing sink is strictly to wash your hands. Is this a safe practice? No. You can see that there are boxes stacked in front of the hand-washing sink, blocking the way to the sink. making it difficult for a person to go and wash their hands. Make sure hand washing sinks are easy to get to and aren't blocked. Never stack food, equipment, or supplies in them, in front of them. A stock sink should have hot and cold running water, liquid soap, single-use paper towels or a hand dryer, and a garbage container. If you don't find these at your agency or program, tell your director or supervisor. There are ways to use gloves correctly. You should wash your hands before putting on gloves when starting a new task. Are these hands safe for handling exposed food? Yes, it looks like they are. The fingernails are short and clean. Keep your fingernails short and clean. Long fingernails can be hard to keep clean. Are these hands safe for handling exposed food? No. This wound is covered only with a bandage. Cover infected wounds correctly. Hands or wrists, cover with a bandage or finger cot that prevents fluid from leaking out. Then place a single-use glove over the cover. To cover your infected wounds correctly on your arms, completely cover with a bandage that prevents fluids from leaking out. For your body, cover with a dry, durable, tight-fitting bandage. Quite often, in the wintertime especially, we have people who are program workers that fall ill. This covers what to do if you are sick. Make sure to tell your director or supervisor if you've been diagnosed with a foodborne illness. Tell your director or supervisor if you're vomiting, if you have diarrhea, if you have jaundice, or if you have a sore throat with a fever. Let's check your knowledge. Which symptoms must be reported to your director or supervisor? The correct answers to be checked are vomiting, jaundice, sore throat with a fever, and diarrhea. The third section that we'll be covering is how to receive and store food safely at your food program. The concepts that you will learn are how to control time and temperature during receiving, how to inspect the food during the receiving to make sure it's safe, and then how to store the food safely. What is important about this temperature range? You're correct if you said that the temperature range between 41 degrees Fahrenheit and 135 degrees Fahrenheit is the temperature danger zone. Pathogens on food will grow in this temperature range and could result in a foodborne illness. Food temperatures must be controlled from pickup from a donor or a food bank to the handoff to the client. This includes the time food spends in the warehouse, on the truck, or at the agency. Think of this as a cold chain that, if broken, can result in foodborne illness. The cold chain is broken whenever food is held at temperatures between 41 and 135 degrees. This is the temperature danger zone. Fortunately, there are several ways to control temperature and prevent a break in the cold chain. Common thermometers in food banks and agencies are infrareds, thermocouples, and bimetallic stem thermometers. Some characteristics of an infrared thermometer is that it displays temperatures instantly. It can help prevent cross-contamination and damage to food because they don't touch the food. They just measure the surface temperature of food and equipment. Some characteristics of thermocouples and other digital thermometers is that you don't need to insert deeply into food. It gives you the temperatures quickly, and it comes with different probes. For our purposes, probes are not stuck into the food product, but placed between two packages of food to see if the food is safe. Characteristics of bimetallic stem thermometers are that they must be inserted or placed between two food packages from the tip of the thermometer stem to the dimple. They take about 15 seconds before a final reading can be taken, and they're easily calibrated. There are ways to correctly calibrate a thermometer, but as you know, thermometers are cheap, especially this kind of thermometer, the probe thermometers, and can be easy to replace. What should you look for when inspecting the delivery vehicle before unloading it? One of the things you should look for is the overall condition of the vehicle. Inspect all deliveries, large or small, to your food distribution program to make sure it's safe. Another thing you can look for when inspecting a delivery vehicle before unloading it are signs of pests in the product or the vehicle. And then check the condition of the product before you unload it. Make sure that there are no objectionable products, such as homemade food, in the delivery. What should you look for when inspecting a delivery vehicle before unloading it? You should, if it is a refrigerated truck, check the correct truck temperature and check the temperature recording device or use an infrared thermometer. Reject the food if it doesn't meet acceptable standards, if you see pests, or if it's excessively dirty. And reject any food that has not been received at these temperatures. Remember, refrigerated food must be at 41 degrees or lower. Frozen food should be frozen solid at 0 degrees or lower. Cut produce should be at 41 degrees or lower. And whole produce can be at dry storage temperatures. Let's apply our knowledge. Identify each item that was not received at the correct temperature below. If you said that all of these were not received at the correct temperature, you would be right. The frozen meat was not received at the correct temperature. It will start to thaw at 38 degrees. Frozen meat must be received frozen solid. The bags of cut lettuce were not received at the correct temperature either. Cut produce must be received at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. The cut melons were received at 45 degrees, and this may be unsafe. Cut produce should be received at 41 degrees or lower. Milk received at 50 degrees may be unsafe. Refrigerated food such as milk should be received at 41 degrees or lower unless otherwise specified by the manufacturer. Has this food been stored correctly? The answer would be no. The containers of sour cream are being stored at 45 degrees Fahrenheit, which is too high for sour cream. General storage guidelines for refrigerated food is at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. This includes cut produce. Has this food been stored correctly in this slide? Yes. The meat is frozen. The general storage guidelines for frozen food is that you'd like it to be frozen solid. The recommended temperature is 0 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Does this food look like it's being stored correctly? The answer is yes. The food is being stored in a designated food storage area. The general storage guidelines is to store food only in designated food storage areas. Are these bananas being stored correctly? No, they are not. They are sitting on the ground, stored on the floor. General storage guidelines say that you should store food at least 6 inches off of the floor. Here we see some boxes in a cooler. Is this food being stored correctly? The answer is no. The boxes are pushed too close to the wall, and so air cannot circulate. General food storage guidelines say that you should store food away from walls. Has the food in this slide been stored correctly? The answer is yes. The ready-to-eat food is stored above the raw food. Store ready-to-eat food above raw meat, seafood, and poultry. Do not store these items on the same shelf or pallet. Is this food being stored correctly? Yes. The food is stored in containers made for food. General storage guidelines say that you should store food only in containers made for food. Wrap or cover food before storing it. What's the purpose of this date? The correct answer is B. This tells the store how long to display the product for sale. This is called a sell-by date. It's a quality date. It tells the store how long to display the product for sale, and the product is still safe to eat past this date. It's only a sell-by date. What is the purpose of this date? If you answered A, you are correct. This date on the top of this can is used for tracking and recalls. This is called a packing or manufacturing date. It's used by manufacturers for tracking and recalls only. It's commonly thought to be an expiration date, but it is not an expiration date. What's the purpose of this date? This is the last date recommended for the product while at peak quality. This is called the use by or expiration date. This is the last date recommended for the product while at peak quality. It's still safe to eat past this date. What is the purpose of this date? This is the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality. This is called the best by or best if used by date. This is a quality date. It tells clients the date by which the product should be eaten for best flavor or quality. The product is still safe to eat past this date. The shelf life for refrigerated food in storage. If it has a sell-by date or no date at all, follow Feeding America guidelines. Freeze the food or distribute the food. Freezing food will keep it safe for long periods of time. Quality will suffer if frozen food is stored too long. Handling recalled food. Ask your director or supervisor how to handle recalls at your agency. 2 people in your agency have been identified as the recall contacts and will be notified in case of a recall of a product that was delivered by Second Harvest Heartland. We send out all national recalls, but we'll contact you if there is a recall of our product. Pay attention to recalls, as you may have received this product from a source that was not Second Harvest Heartland. There are 2 methods of rotating food. The first is FIFO. Follow the first expired, first out method if the food has a use by or expiration date. Check the use by or expiration date. Store the food that will expire first in front of the items that will expire later, and use the food stored in front first. FIFO. The second is called FIFO, first in, first out. Step 1 is to check the delivery date. Step 2 is to store food with the earliest delivery date in front of the food with the later dates. Step 3 is to use the food stored in front first. The next section we will cover is evaluating, repacking, and transporting food safely. Here are the concepts that you will learn. How to evaluate the condition of food. We'll talk about repackaging food, and we'll talk about loading and distributing food safely. There are several slides here that we'll look at to help you see how to evaluate the condition of food. And these mostly will be cans at first. In this slide, which of these cans should be discarded? Both cans have serious defects that could cause a foodborne illness, so discard both of these kinds of cans. If they have severe dents in the can seams, or if they have deep dents in the can body, or they're crushed cans that are not stackable. Which of these cans should be discarded? A. The can without the label is a serious defect that could cause a foodborne illness. This is true unless the cans were donated by a food manufacturer who provided the necessary labeling information with the donation. Discard cans if they have these problems: missing labels, unreadable labels, or no code dates. Second Harvest has cans that we send out that we call shiners that have no labels. You should be receiving labels with those shiners that you can place on the cans. If you do not have those labels, contact your account specialist. Which of these cans should be discarded? Both cans have serious defects that could cause a foodborne illness, so should be discarded. Discard cans if they have swollen or bulging ends, rust that cannot be wiped off, should this can be discarded? Yes. This can has a serious defect that could cause a foodborne illness. You can see that it has holes in it. Visible signs of leaking or holes should be discarded. What's wrong with this jar? You can see that this jar has a dented lid. Discard jars and bottles with these problems: dented lids, swollen lids, or rusted lids. What's wrong with this container? You can see that this container of milk has a lid that is loose. Discard jars and bottles that have loose lids, or the button in the lid is raised, which indicates a broken seal, or if it's missing the seal, unless the inner seal is intact and not discolored. What's wrong with this jar? This jar is missing its label. Discard any jars and bottles that are missing labels, have unreadable labels, or have no code dates. And what's wrong with this jar? You can see that it has signs of leakage. Discard jars and bottles with these problems: signs of leakage, or if the jar is chipped or broken. What's wrong with this jar? If you can see it, this jar has mold inside of the jar. Discard jars and bottles with these problems: food that contains mold or foreign objects, or if there are signs of dirt or mold under the lid. What's wrong with this jar? You can see that the food is discolored in this mayonnaise. Discard jars and bottles with these problems: if food is discolored or it has an unusual appearance or separation, throw it out. You should check commercially packaged dry foods for defects. Some dry food is packaged in a single package. Other food is double packaged, with the food contained in an inner package. This includes flour, cereal, pasta, bread, and rice. What's wrong with this package of dry food? This food is missing a label. If there are no labels, or the labels are not correct, or it has an unreadable label, or it has no code dates, throw it out. You can see that this container has gnaw marks. Discard commercially packaged dry food with problems such as sign of pests with gnaw marks or droppings or insects, whether they be dead or alive, or if there are pin-sized holes in packaging. Throw them out. Or if you find boxes with inner package damage. Discard commercially packaged dry food with these problems: if it's damaged, if it's wet, if it's stained, throw it out. You can see that this food package has been punctured or cut. Discard commercial packaged dry food with these problems: Single packaged food that is exposed, open packaging, ripped or torn packaging, if it's punctured or cut, or if it's split at the seams. It can be discarded. You can see that these strawberries have mold on them. Discard produce with these problems. If they are moldy, if they have decay or rot, or if they have bad odors. Sometimes you can pick through the produce and take out if there are just a few that are moldy or rotten and it doesn't affect the rest of the produce, then you can just remove those. Otherwise, discard the whole package. What's wrong with this produce? This produce has severe bruises. Discard produce if they have severe bruises, if the skin's not intact. Bruises and punctures provide a way for pathogens to get inside the produce. What's wrong with this produce? The skin on these tomatoes is split. If the skin is not intact, pathogens can find a way of getting inside the produce. Throw them out. What's wrong with this produce? You can see that the temperature on this produce is too warm. If cut produce is not at 41 degrees or lower or has no code dates, throw it out. What looks wrong with this picture? These potatoes look like they're stored in a garbage bag, which would be considered unsafe packaging. Discard produce that is repacked in packaging not safe for use with food, or if it has signs of insects, live insects, insect bodies, or insect eggs. Reject medications with these problems: broken, tamper-resistant seals, or damaged products. You can check with your program director or supervisor to see if over-the-counter medications can be received in your agency. Never accept products containing ephedrine or pseudoephedrine. Reject medications with these problems if they're expired or if they're past the use-by date. Reject medications if the label is not intact or you can't read it, or if it doesn't include all the necessary information. Now we'll talk a little bit about repacking food. Second Harvest recommends that you do not repack food. Generally, food distributions are not authorized to repack any food item, as the requirements for a clean room are very strict and expensive. The risk of allergen contamination or pathogens causing illness or death is so high that it's simply not worth the possible benefits of repacking food. And also the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan Act would be violated. These are the requirements for a clean room. There are strict conditions for repacking of food. In general, it must be performed in a designated clean room. A clean room is a separate enclosed room dedicated to bulk repacking and not used for anything else. It must be designed to the highest standards of sanitation, and it must prevent as many environmental contaminants as possible. Interior surfaces must be durable and easy to clean. It must be built to commercial food service construction standards, and it must meet your local health regulations. Food should only be repacked in a clean room that can maintain a temperature of 55 degrees or lower. So you can see that repacking food is not for your agency. What's wrong with this picture? The scoops are not being stored correctly. You can see that the sanitizer is coming into contact with the scoops. You should always store clean and sanitized equipment so it doesn't become contaminated. What's missing from this label on a repackaged food item? You see that it offers the name of the food, the quantity of the food, and it also lists each major food allergen. So what is it missing? It's missing the name and address of the manufacturer, packer, or distributor, and the list of ingredients and sub-ingredients in descending order by weight. Now we'll talk a little bit about delivery vehicles and how to load and distribute food safely. So if you have a delivery vehicle, you should make sure and clean the inside of the vehicle at least once per week or as often as necessary. Make sure that the vehicles are pest-free and never deliver food in vehicles used to haul garbage. Do not bring pets when delivering food. Keep items that could contaminate food separate from deliveries, such as oil, antifreeze, or wiper fluid. Take them out of the vehicle before delivering any food in the vehicle. And you should lock and seal delivery vehicles when they're not being loaded or unloaded. Keep food at 41 degrees or lower. If you have a readout on the truck recording device, check that. Leave the refrigeration units on and the vehicle doors closed during inactivity, and pre-cool the refrigerated trucks prior to loading. Now let's check your knowledge. What's wrong with this delivery? You can see that the food has been left outside. Do not leave food outside and unsupervised. What's wrong with this delivery? You can see that this food has been left by the garbage container. Do not ever put food by garbage containers. What's wrong with this picture? It looks like this food has been left at room temperature. Never leave refrigerated or frozen food at room temperature. Always put that food away first. You can see here that the food, the soup boxes, are being stored underneath bleach boxes, which means that chemicals have been loaded with the food on the same pallet. Keep chemicals separate from food. When you prepare food for transport, be sure to use boxes that are sturdy, clean, and dry. Keep shelf-stable food in a clean, dry storage area. Keep food in a pest-free area. You can see that this food is stored off of the ground. Keep meat, poultry, and seafood separate from each other and away from other food. What's wrong with the way this food was loaded? You can see that the meat products are stored on top of the melons, which means that there is raw food over ready-to-eat food. Do not store raw food over ready-to-eat food. Raw food includes raw meat, seafood, poultry, and shell eggs. What's wrong with this picture? Milk products, which we know are allergens, are being stored over other food. Do not store allergens over other products. What's wrong with this picture? You can see that chemicals are being stored with food boxes. Do not store chemicals with food products. Keep chemicals set in a separate area. When loading and transporting food, keep refrigerated food at 41 degrees or lower during transport. If possible, keep frozen food at temperatures that will keep it frozen. When loading and transporting food, keep food cold in unrefrigerated vehicles by covering refrigerated and frozen food with thermal blankets. Or you can place it in coolers with ice packs. Load refrigerated and frozen food so that air can circulate around the food. And if possible, use pallet slip sheets. When loading and transporting food, keep drive times in unrefrigerated vehicles to 30 minutes or less. Check the temperature of refrigerated food when it's reached its destination and log those temperatures. You can see here that they're checking the temperatures of the eggs. The last section that we're going to be covering is the cleaning and sanitizing section. And the concepts that mostly for our purposes we'll talk about are handling garbage and spotting pests. There is a difference between cleaning and sanitizing. Cleaning removes food and other dirt from a surface, and sanitizing reduces pathogens on a surface to safe levels. In cleaning and sanitizing surfaces, all surfaces must be cleaned and rinsed. The walls and floors, storage shelves, and garbage containers should all be cleaned regularly. What's wrong with the way this garbage was handled? It looks like this garbage has been allowed to stack up and sit. Remove garbage as quickly as possible and be careful not to contaminate food or surfaces when removing garbage. And remember never to store food by garbage. How is the garbage being handled safely here? This worker is cleaning the garbage container. Clean the inside and the outside of garbage containers often. Do not clean garbage containers in clean rooms or food storage areas. You can see that the lid on this garbage container is closed. Make sure that the lids are closed on all outdoor containers. This keeps out pests and keep the odors in. Keep indoor containers covered when they're not in use. Which of these would you say are signs of pests? Not very pleasant to look at, but all of them have signs of pests. You can see that there are droppings in the box in the first slide, in slide A. In the second slide, you can see that there are nests being made in the area. And in the third slide, you see that there are damages of gnawing marks and clawing marks to this bag. of food. Pests such as insects and rodents carry pathogens that can make people sick. Insect parts even can be a source of physical contamination. It's important to tell a director or supervisor if the signs in the slide are spotted, because you'll want to take care of this problem. Droppings, nests, and pest damage. That concludes our webinar, our food handler food safety webinar.